is the first R of resilience. If you look at the picture of the fist there, symbolically, it's a fist for resistance, but it's also got a bunch of hearts on it. But if you look at the hearts specifically, the hearts are all multicolored. So it's love and power to a lot of different people of multicultural nationalities. I want you to think about resist. When you think about resist, simplistically, I want you to think about what do you do to keep from going off on somebody when you have the right to go off on them? How do you keep from going off on people, okay? I'm gonna start with a verse and I'm gonna end with a verse. My dear brothers, this is James 1:19. My dear brothers, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Webster says resist is to withstand, strive against, or oppose, to resist infection, to resist temptation, to withstand the action or effect of, to refrain or abstain from, especially with difficulty or reluctance. I'm a firm believer. I stand on the shoulders of my predecessors, my ancestors. If you look at the top left, my granddaddy was a Virginia sharecropper. That's him to the right, my mother's to the left, uncle, grandmother, aunt, little brother being held, and that's me on the ground. That's my mother holding me, and that's my mother holding some tobacco. My dad was a Montford Point Marine, and I learned a lot of lessons from my dad. One of the lessons I learned at a very young age, and I didn't think about it until after I was grown. We were in Washington, D.C., which is where I grew up. We went to McDonald's because McDonald's hadn't been invented yet, but it was a fast food restaurant. I'm with my brother and my two brothers and my father. My dad goes in to get the food. He comes out to the car. Next to our car is a police car. Next to the police car is a couple, a black couple in a car. My dad comes out with the food. He happens to hit the door of the police car. One of the police officers said, "How many more times you gonna hit it?" My dad said, "I don't know," and started arguing with the police. Eventually, the police left. My dad went over to the car of the couple that was in there, and the couple said, "You gotta be crazy, man. Why in the world did you argue with those police?" And my dad said this, "I knew that you all were witnesses. That's why I said what I said. If you all weren't there, I never would have had a conversation." Very strategic in how he did things. In the picture to the right, my dad's to the left. I'm in the middle just before I got out of the Marine Corps after 5.5 years. And to the right is Carl III. I was born in Washington, D.C., in an environment where everybody looked like me. I moved to Spotsylvania, Virginia in the 8th grade, where nobody looked like me, integrating to school during the same time period as the movie Remember the Titans. My experiences were very similar. I was in an environment where people didn't want me to be there. I couldn't get out of it, so I had to figure out how to deal with it, right? What I learned out of that situation was everybody wants the same thing. They want to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful. I don't care what color you are, what your nationality is. That's what I learned in that environment. My high school coach was the third most influential person in my life. He's the one that sent a recruiter to my high school to recruit me to play football at the Naval Academy. And I didn't know what the Naval Academy was because it was only 90 miles up the road. There weren't a whole lot of people that looked like me going to the Naval Academy. I played baseball and was the MVP of the football team. I applied to the Naval Academy, could not get in because I was academically not able to. I was not competitive with my GPA and my SAT scores. I went to a prep school in Harlingen, Texas called Marine Military Academy. Reapplied, got into the academy. While I was at Marine Military Academy, one of the things I learned in that environment was, wow, there's some people that get dogged out just like Black people, and it was the Mexicans. That was an eye-opening experience to me. So I go to the Naval Academy, top left-hand corner. I'm the only Black in my company at the Naval Academy, right? And I was in a class one time and they had these sliding chalkboards. And the professor was talking, the chalkboard comes down. On the chalkboard, it says, N-word, go home. We don't want you there. Top I'm in my football uniform with a high school classmate that I played ball with who went to VMI. Top right-hand corner is myself and 5 other friends of mine that graduated from the Naval Academy. Bottom left, you Army guys are not gonna like this. I happened to play on the team in 1973. We beat Army 51-0. Middle bottom is a classmate of mine named General John Allen. He was the head of all Afghan forces. That's at my 45th reunion. In the back, you see the Admiral, David Robinson, who played for San Antonio. Bottom right is me on induction day with my parents at the Naval Academy. I decided to go into the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is the epitome of a good old boy system. It is the most powerful good old boy system. And you can call it whatever you want to call it, but that's the system that the Marine Corps has, in my opinion. That's what I saw, and I'll take it to my grave. That's me in front of the aircraft that I flew, CH-46 helicopter. To the right there, I'm in Pensacola. Classmate of mine to the left, a Coast Guard Academy grad. We all went through flight school together. I was the only one that graduated. The attrition rate for aviators in the Navy at that point in time was 66%. 1 out of 3 graduate and get their wings. For brothers, it was 1 out of 6. I was in the Marine Corps. I was on a deployment. We're getting ready to get a ready room brief. I'm sitting in the back of the ready room. There was a 1972 Naval Academy graduate who was a captain. He was the head guy on the aircraft, and I was the co-pilot. I'm sitting in the ready room. He looks at me and says, "Come up here, boy." I looked around. I said, "Who are you talking to?" He said, "Come up here, boy." I said, "I'm not your boy." After about 5 minutes, I sauntered up to the top of the ready room, right? Now, to me, it's not what you call me, it's what I answer to that's important. But I can give you story after story after story in the Marine Corps. I get out of the Marine Corps, right? I go to Procter & Gamble in Albany, Georgia, one of the few places that Dr. King could not crack. What attracted me to this opportunity was when the plant was founded in 1971, and the leaders said, we're gonna hire the same multicultural mix as the community. The community had 40% African-Americans in the community. When I got there in 1981, 40% of the technicians were African-American, 20% of the managers were African-American, and 20% of the managers were women. Unheard of in Southwest Georgia, one of the few places that Dr. King couldn't crack. I learned a lot of valuable lessons from people that look like me. You can learn from people that look like you, and you can learn from people that don't look like you. I'll give you the situation there. I was operations manager. My boss's name was Ron. We had a senior technician put his hand in the machine, did not lock it out, and it cut half of his hand off. My boss calls a meeting, shuts the line down. We have a meeting. He talks about safety. After he talks, he says, "Anybody want to talk?" I raised my hand. He said, "Okay." I raised my hand, started talking. He shuts me off and talks over me. Then after he talks, he says, "Okay, Carl, you can speak." I says, "No, I'm good." I stewed and stewed on that. Got on my bike, rode to a couple of different neighborhoods. The third Black manager in all of Procter & Gamble's history, a guy named Bob, I went by his house and we started talking. I told him about the situation. He said, "You ought to go back and talk to Ron." I said, "Really?" I said, "What am I going to do?" So I developed a strategy. I had a meeting with Ron. We're in a room by ourselves. I said, "How would you feel if your boss, Bob, shut you off while you were talking?" He says, "I wouldn't feel good about that. Why are you mentioning that?" I said, "That's what you did to me in that meeting." And I said, "This is America. You will never tell me to stop talking." He apologized. Now, if I had not had that conversation with Bob White, the Black man, I never would have had that conversation, right? But in that situation, it's a lot of things you can say behind closed doors. If I had made that same comment in an open forum, I probably would have got jammed up. Again, lessons that I learned from people that look like me that were very, very successful. So I leave Procter & Gamble and I go to Frito-Lay. Procter & Gamble hires from within. Frito-Lay steals people from Procter & Gamble and other places, and just kind of, it's a backbiting, tit for tat type environment, not the environment I wanted to work in. In the left there, you see me talking to some football players talking about quitters never win, winners never quit, which is in my book. On the right-hand side, that's a young man that attends the prep school that I went to. I was a commencement speaker in May. He bought my book, and that's kind of what that is. So I go from Frito-Lay after 3 years to Colgate-Palmolive in Topeka, Kansas. The company was actually Hill's Pet Nutrition. We made Science Diet and Prescription Diet, cat and dog food. The only union plant and the first union plant that I'd ever worked in. I trained for a year to become the plant manager of this plant. It was a union facility, never worked in a union facility before. My first day on the job as the plant manager, I go into my office. There's a manila envelope on my desk. I said, wow, somebody wants to congratulate me for becoming the plant manager. I opened the manila envelope. There's 3 things in it. One is a hangman's noose. The second thing is a letter that says, we don't want you here. And the third thing is a picture of 6 white gentlemen saying KKK New Hills employees. I said, wow, somebody doesn't want me here. I said, but you know what? They messed with the wrong Negro, because I've been through this crap before. I know how to deal with it, right? So here's what I did. I called in the chief union steward, a guy named Ralph, red hair down to his waist. We had developed a relationship. I called in the HR manager, and I called in a gentleman who happened to be Black, who had been with the company for 20 years and came up through the ranks. I showed them what I got. They all looked at it and said, oh man, I can't remember. I can't believe this. I said, here's the deal. I don't want you to do anything with this. I just want you to know that I got it. Then I went out, took care of business, did what I always do. Talked to people, found out how to solve problems. We had the best performing plant in the system, and we were the only union facility. As well as we turned that union facility into a high performing work system, where traditionally you would have union people only doing one job. We had people doing multiple jobs, all because of the experience that I had that I talked about before. So I'm in Topeka, Kansas at this plant, right? Union facility, and then I do a sales job. I'm constantly moving west. I wanted to live somewhere between Virginia, where my parents were living, and Florida, which is where my wife is from. So I ended up talking to my boss's boss, and he said, let me ask you 2 questions. He says, are you happy doing what you're doing? And are you doing it where you want to do it? I said, no and no. He says, okay, I'll try to get you a severance package. So I got a separation package and took a job with Dunlap Schlesinger in Westminster, South Carolina, as the vice president of manufacturing, making golf balls and clubs. After about 6 months, it became clear that my boss and I agreed to disagree. At the 11-month mark, I get a call from my administrative assistant, Lane. Lane says, the Eagle has landed. The Eagle was my boss, who was headquartered in England. He'd come to South Carolina. I didn't know he was coming. So I called my wife. I said, Jackie, Stan's in town. I wasn't expecting him. Something might go down, but don't worry, because God will provide. So sure enough, my boss comes in with the HR manager, who I developed a great relationship with. And they say, you know why we're here, right? I says, no. He says, well, things aren't going well. I says, I agree with that. So we agreed to disagree and separate. So that evening, I'm cleaning out my desk, cleaning out my office. One of my supervisors sees me cleaning it out. He says, Carl, what are you doing? I says, I'm cleaning out my office. Why is that? I says, I'm leaving. He started crying. He says, I can't believe you're leaving. He says, you're the best manager we've ever had. Sometimes you never know how valuable you are until you headed out the door. So I'm in the right place, and I decided to, what can I do? I said, I can do speaking, I can do business consulting, I can do executive coaching, I can do strategic planning. I said, so I hung out the shingle and started using my network to get business. And that's basically what I did. Top left is my book, Sharp Leadership, Overcome Adversity to Lead with Authenticity. It's about 5 years old. It basically talks about all the different things I'm talking about here, as well as 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So that's in the book also. Bottom left is a book I contributed to called The Experience of Leadership. A football player of mine wrote a book, had me contribute, and the person that writes the forward in that is Admiral McRaven, who wrote the book, Make Your Bed or Make My Bed. Bottom middle is my daughter. She's an author also. She's holding my book. I'm holding her book. Her book is called Dream, Build, and Repeat. And on the right-hand side is a book called The Black Manager in Corporate America. I read that book when I was working for Procter & Gamble. Floyd and Jackie Dickens. Floyd was an A&T engineer, third African-American engineer hired by Procter & Gamble. So while he was going through Procter & Gamble, his wife, who was getting her doctorate degree, she wrote a thesis about his trials and tribulations in corporate America. So as I read this book, it gave me tips on how to deal with certain things. These are all great reads. These are some random pictures. Top left, I'm with a guy, 17-year Marine Corps veteran. Got out of Marine Corps post-traumatic stress disorder, became a substance abuser. Then he became homeless. Now he runs a shelter for homeless veterans. He said my book's the first book he ever read from cover to cover in his life. Top middle is General Raymond. He's the 4-star general of Space Force. Top right, feeding the homeless. Bottom left, there's an organization that I'm a part of near where I live called Vets Helping Vets. Every Wednesday, over 100 veterans, mostly Vietnam era veterans, meet for about 2 hours. All right, I'm one of the few Blacks in that meeting. They have auctioned off Trump hats and all other kind of stuff. But in order to change an environment, sometimes you got to be in it. And I know that everybody wants the same thing. They want to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful, right? Everybody wants that same thing. So you got to show love. Bottom middle is a young man at the Naval Academy. I went to my 45th reunion. He's got my book. Bottom right, I was a football player there. There's an organization called the Brotherhood of Former Football Players at Navy. One of my classmates had his jersey retired, and I went to that on my 45th, and that's what that is. Top left, I was a commencement speaker at Marine Military Academy, the prep school I went to. I'm getting the Iwo Jima statute from General Dowling. Top left is an academy I spoke at. Right-hand side, I'm on the parade field. Bottom left, I spoke to some Navy reservists. In the bottom right are my high school classmates at my 40th reunion. When I got there as an 8th grader, I was the only one in most of my classes. In the 10th grade, they merged the two schools, so there were a lot more African Americans that came to that school at that point in time. But those are my classmates from high school. This group of individuals here, these are some bad brothers, class of 1976. In this class, we have the first black brigade commander at the Naval Academy. We've got the first black color company commander at the Naval Academy. We've got a 3-star admiral, distinguished graduate, alumni, very prestigious award, which is going to be celebrated next weekend, and I'm going to attend. This is DC Curtis, who was on. I'm not sure if he's still on, but the thing he's most proud of is 4 children, 4 Naval Academy graduates, 1 Marine Corps, 3 Navy, 1 boy, 3 girls. We got 2 attorneys, 1 judge, sitting judge in this class. We got 7 aviators. We got 30 Navy officers, 13 Marine officers, 2 authors, 11 retired officers, 17 corporate executives, and several entrepreneurs. We were some bad shut your mouth. Okay, this is more current. Top left, the class of 74, 75, 76, and 77 are pretty tight. We have a getaway every year at Bethany Beach. That's them on top left. Top right is at my 40th reunion at the Naval Academy. Bottom left, there was a classmate that died, class of 75. We took a picture there. Bottom middle is my 45th reunion, a picture of several of my classmates. And on the bottom right, there's a book called Blue and Gold and Black. And the book talks about 150 years ago was the first African-American that entered the Naval Academy, did not graduate. 1949, the first graduate, Wesley Brown, graduated from the Naval Academy. So this Robert Scheller documents that. He talks about the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and I think the 2000s, right? So as I'm reading this book, I knew what was going on in the 1970s, right? But I'm listening and reading about people in the 1990s. I'm thinking, dog, they got it worse than we had it. It was unbelievable. I just think that when we were there, it was a lot tighter, but now it's a lot of things have been watered down. That's just my perspective. These are some of my buddies. Top left is, the left-hand side is Bill Belichick, coach of the New England Patriots. In the middle, I'm with the Tiger at Clemson. I'm currently the interim director of military veteran engagement at Clemson University. And on the right-hand side is Roger Staubach, 1963 Heisman Trophy winner, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm at an event where one of my coaches has been recognized and memorialized. Now, Bill Belichick's dad, Steve Belichick, was a strength coach at the Naval Academy for 45 years. Let's sum it up. I said I was going to begin with scripture and I'm going to end with scripture. Above all things, it's 1 Peter 4:8. Above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins. So what's the strategy? Summarizing what I talked about. Number one, you got to pick and choose your battles. You want to win the war. You can't win every battle. Sometimes the best thing to do is say nothing. Get your thoughts together, develop a strategy, and come back with a plan and what you need to say. That's what I did when I was talking to my boss that had talked over me in that situation at Procter & Gamble. Number three, a lot of things can be said behind closed doors to add value to a tough situation. You praise in public, you chastise in private. You always do that. To me, that's a hard and fast rule. Number four, when you are taken aback, be silent and maybe ask a question. That's what Jesus did. Who do you say I am? He who has not sinned, throw the first stone. So when you're in a situation, sometimes the best thing to do is say nothing and ask a question. You ask enough questions, sometimes the person you're talking to will finally figure out, you know what? I've made a stupid statement. I'm tired of asking these questions. Answer these questions because they don't make any sense. Number five, resist the temptation to go off in a public forum. No one is ever going to make me go off when I don't want to go off. If I go off, it's going to be very strategic, and I'm going to assess the situation and know what the potential outcome is going to be before I just run off at the mouth. Number six, everyone wants the same thing. They want to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful. This is my book. You can Google my name and find me on a lot of different platforms. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions and allow people to say whatever they want to say.
First of all, I want to thank you so much for an outstanding presentation. This has been, wow, very, very powerful. Now, to keep things in an orderly fashion, if you have any questions or comments or remarks, please raise your hand. That way, people can be called upon in order of when they raise their hand. So again, you can find that option under the actions. All right, so we're going to start with Hayes. Over to you, Hayes.
Thank you, Dr. X. Carl, this is very, very powerful. I was obviously multitasking and you stopped me in my boots. Do you know Byron Marchant or Cecil Haney?
I do.
Both mentors of mine. And again, it stopped me in my boots, and Mel Williams. And so clearly this message is timely to me, and I really appreciate it. That's what I'm struggling with, not going off in public.
Everybody's got a story, brother. I guarantee you, everybody's got a story.
Absolutely. So I have no questions, just a comment. Thank you for the message.
All right, thanks, Hayes. Gloria. Gloria, you're on mute. There you go. Well, You came off and went back on mute, Gloria.
Okay.
There you go.
Carl, I was just saying, it's so glad to hear the story, so many untold stories. And you're the first one in the group that has had a connect to my family. My late husband was first cousin to Wesley Brown, all of those DC Dunbar School guys. And so we just miss Wesley so much. And just a wonderful, wonderful person, lived right up the street on 16th Street by Rock Creek Park. So thank you for presenting, and thank you for sharing some of my family history that I didn't know I was going to hear about today.
Outstanding.
All right, thanks, Gloria. Tony.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great presentation. Just listen to the history. And you mentioned one Fort Marines. I just interviewed those guys a couple weeks ago, honoring Black Christian Month. I wanted to hear those guys. So the question I have for you, and this is what I took on the role as being the Armed Services and Veteran Affairs Committee Chair down here in St. Pete, is that our community don't value the veteran like the white community. I feel like I got to push and pull and everything else just to get our name heard. And I'm trying to understand the reasoning of why our community don't value us as much. And like you just saw all those pictures you saw there with just you being only African American, whatever. And I experienced the same thing here. So if you have any kind of even, and Gloria too, any kind of way we can find a way to strategically provide, promote more value in our own community.
That's a good question. And that's why I started off with my family. And I think it's important. To me, one of the most important things is to understand where you came from, whatever that is, right? And for whatever reason, we are ashamed of our past sometimes. And a lot of times we make it and we don't want people to know where we came from. And the people that don't know their history are dying to repeat it. And we're repeating it now. To answer your question, I'll send you my dad. I have a 1-hour video interview of my dad when he was 80-some years old, talking about the month of Fort Marines, and I'll send that to you if you shoot me your information. It's pretty powerful.
So one big thing, the question was about value, and you're not going to recognize that going forward if, one, you don't know where you came from, and you don't recognize that you have value. Some of us downgrade ourselves because we listen to what everybody else is saying about us and take it to heart and believe it. Don't believe that crap.
Next, we're going to have Charles, and then we're going to come back to Chuck.
Yeah, I had a couple of your your rules. Remember, I said my resistance had to do with dealing with teenagers, actually, in a classroom setting. And I find sometimes I do have to pick and choose, but I do find if I chastise in public, if the student approaches me in public, I sometimes choose to do it in public. So if anyone else is thinking about doing the same thing, or whatever I want, the message I want to relate to the kid or student, that they also hear it too. So I sometimes resist people saying you don't chastise in public. And of course, I've had moments when I say, yeah, we better go outside. Sometimes I say, wait a minute, let me tell you something. And everybody's listening. That's one thing. And you can come back at me in a moment. The other thing is that I also find that the reason why I feel good about doing that at this moment, until you correct me, is that I do it. All this I do is definitely about love and trying to uplift these kids as they grow into themselves. So go ahead and react to my statements.
No, I think that's fine. It's all strategic though. Like I said before, I go off sometimes too, but I know what I'm doing when I do it.
Right.
So
okay.
That's the key thing to me, is don't just go off and not know what the consequences are. You're doing it strategically. To me, that's okay.
Yeah. And you're right.
There is benefit to value to tough love.
Yeah, we could, and that's a nice cliche, but I will tell you, what I see is that in those situations, I see that these students sometimes are the first time someone even cared at all. And it comes from a negative experience sometimes, but they do finally recognize that you do care. You know, so and you're right. Strategically, that's in my head that I know they're here. But the only risk I take is that students see me deal with this kid, and I may scare a few kids who really doesn't deserve to hear all that. So I take that risk.
All right, thanks, Charles. Next, we're going to have Chuck Cole.
Good morning, everyone. So I get the impression that this forum is something that happens on a recurring basis. I don't think I was aware of that. Carl, you may have invited me before. I'm not sure, but I guess maybe you invited me this time because you were speaking. But Carl and I know each other very well. We stay in touch. We get together. And it's kind of interesting as he was going through things. And if you read a couple of things that I put in the chat, he hit a couple of trigger points, and I responded with some things that came to my mind that he immediately spoke to. So I was out in front of some of the things that Carl was saying and some comments. So I just want to recommend to everyone to take what Carl said that was enhanced by what I put in the chat, take it to heart. You have to be strategic. You have to pick your spots. Every battle wasn't meant to be fought immediately when you see it. But we do need to push back. We do need to value ourselves, uplift ourselves, be self-motivating, and not let someone else tell you what your worth is. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful. Thanks, Chuck. Next, Tiffany. Tiffany Daniel. If you're there, you're on mute. All right, we'll come back to Tiffany. Aura?
Yes, good morning. What a presentation and amazing life experiences. I just look at all that you said, and what I got out of it was key reactions and key moments, and strategically taking steps when they're ordered. Listen to your life story with each move that you made. I think there was a person that God planted in your path to either encourage you to take that step, hold your peace, or to react, because for every action, there's going to be a reaction. And it's just like, as you're telling the story, all the pieces was falling in proper perspective in moving you forward in your life goals. In reacting to holding your peace, I'll say. There's what's that song? Know when to hold them, and know when to fold them, and to move on. And you have to, with me, I've learned a key component for me in reacting to whatever someone says to me is to listen first. Listen to what that person says, and how they say it is very important. And then react upon that. And if it moves you, as you said, at some point you were packing up, you thought it was time to pack up and go. But in that moment, the gentleman came in, he was upset because he thought you was going to leave them. And it's the same with how you react to any person that approach you in a negative way, as well as a positive way. A lot of times as we as Blacks, it was something that someone said about why aren't we perceived in our conversation in a positive way? Well, we're Black, period. And when you're in corporate or in life, that's what they're going to see first. With women in particular, if you respond sometimes, oh, we're the angry Black woman. First off, if we're going to speak our mind and stand our ground on things. I was in corporate for over 30 years. And if you speak directly to a person, tell them what you want, how you want it. As a Black woman, a lot of times, as I said, they say, oh, she's too tough, or she has an attitude, so forth. And a man, even a Black man, and of course, if it's your counterpart's white, they perceive, oh, she's bold. She knows what she needs. She knows what she wants. She's steadfast. So again, I just think the gentleman's talking about the children also, and how he responds in working with kids, and the environment that he chooses, and how he may have to chastise a child or so forth. And those are key components also with kids. from tops on up. If a child runs into your room and said, and you might be on the phone, and mommy, or trying to ask you a question, you say, don't you see me on the phone? How that child perceives what you're saying, the reaction, again, it's a link, key reaction, and how he's going to react. He's either going to be very upset, turn around, start crying, walk out. But if you just take a moment, honey, don't you see I'm on the phone? Give me a moment. He'll stand there for those however long you're on the phone and just wait. So again, I just wanted to reflect on the key, the chain reaction and the pushback of ordered steps, how God will place people in your path to continue to move you on. The key to me, again, listen and how you react. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, well, I want to comment on a couple of things. One of the things that I think is very, very important, and you alluded to it, is relationships. And I learned that at a very young age. I learned, I got it on steroids at the Naval Academy, understanding how important relationships were. And nobody gets to anywhere unless they know somebody because of relationships, right? Now, the other thing is minorities or those that have been marginalized in an organization are the equivalent of the canaries when the miner goes down to determine whether or not there's going to be enough oxygen to breathe, okay? When the canary dies, the miner knows that they need to get out because the oxygen is leaving. If you identify and pay attention to the minorities, those that have been marginalized in your organization, if they're hurting, it's just a matter of time that everybody else is hurting. So if you can understand that and utilize that, then it's very powerful. When I was at Procter & Gamble, there was an organization formed called the Black Managers Work Team. The Black Managers Work Team initially started meeting in houses. When I got there, they were on the agenda for senior leadership because they understood that if you help recruiting Black folk, you help recruit everybody.
Powerful, powerful. We got two more questions. We're going to go with Dave and then
Can I just interject? Can I just interject for 1 second? I also just wanted to state about our history and getting the understanding about our military community, to understand the contribution of our military Black men and women. Again, this whole team that's on board, we are the key to connect the dots. It's the same as Black history, our history, it's been eliminated. The contribution of Black men and women in the military is not told system-wide. So it's upon us to tell the story. Black Cowboys, was the story, The Harder They Fall. If any of you have seen that story, it's based on true characters. People don't even know that. That the Lone Ranger was a Black man. He was the first marshal. A lot of people don't know that. All those characters in that movie pertaining to Black cowboys, never heard of them before. Just came out here now, you know. The Black Cowboys in Chicago, never heard of the story until the movie Concrete Cowboys. So again, with our Black men and women in military, unless we that have the knowledge, have the information and share it, if many people that's going to listen to the story, they won't know. We have to be the voices for those that cannot speak for themselves. In Southern Maryland, there's a veteran museum that's highlighting Black vets, taking Black artifacts from Black soldiers down through history. It's a really beautiful museum, and they are on the goal to get that information. It's only one of the, it's been classified through the Smithsonian now under their tutelage to get that information out about Black soldiers during past eras. So just want to share, but it's upon us to get the story out.
Thanks, Aura. Next, Dave, and then Dale, and then I think Ike has a comment, and then we'll turn it back over to Carl for closing comments. Dave. Dave Miles.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize you were after me. Okay, I was actually putting it in the chat, but I'll just say it out loud here. Basically, one of the things I think is that only 1% of Americans have ever served in the military as of right now. Now, if you served and you've done well, You got your stars, you got your bars, you got your stripes, and you're now out there in the world of work. People they don't really know who we are anyway. They don't know us as military people. They don't know us as anything other than what they may have seen in the entertainment world. And as a result of that, you're the first you that they may have seen. In many ways, to them, you're basically Jamestown in 1608. That's the best way I can put it to you. But I thank you so much for coming back to me. I didn't realize, so I'm still looking at the word owner on my screen. And I'm thinking, who's Dave? Who's Dave? I'm Dave, but thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Dave.
Hey, Dave, I want you to stay on and I want to show you how to change that name before we leave. But go ahead.
Dave, I stuck instructions for how to do that in the chat, but obviously you don't know what that is.
Exactly.
And don't tell anybody you're our classmate either, Dave.
I think it's a good thing he's on mute.
I'm an analog man in a digital world. What do you want from me?
There you go. Next, Dale, and then Ike.
Hey, I was reminded by some of the comments about when to speak and how to speak. I was reminded of being in my sophomore year at the Citadel and being part of the training cadre and being at the active duty officer's home, getting ready for the incoming freshmen to come in and sitting around on the floor at a beer party and him coming over and sitting down next to me and saying, "How's it going?" And I said, "Well, it's going fine, sir." And then he said, no, how's it going? And I said, "Well, what do you mean, sir?" He said, "Look around this room. In all likelihood, none of these other guys here have ever been around anyone like you before." Of course, I was the only black in my company. And he said, "It is your responsibility that if they should ever say anything in your presence that you find personally offensive, to correct it on the spot." Now, this gentleman was a vertically challenged Italian American from New York City. And I often wondered what compelled him to share that with me. And all I could come up with was a vertically challenged Italian American from New York City. And clearly he grew up with some of the same challenges that we had as African Americans. And I was never a confrontational kind of person, but since that day, I'm talking to myself when confronted with a situation like that, and I'm more inclined to step to the situation or to be more assertive in a situation than I ordinarily would have been. So I was reminded of that based on some of the conversation, and I just wanted to share it. Thank you.
Hey, Dale, I wanted to make a comment about that. I do some diversity, equity, inclusion training, and you talked about the person that was vertically challenged. My experience has been everybody has been marginalized at some point in time in their life. You're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too black, you're too white, you're too smart, you're too dumb, you're too pretty, you're too ugly. I had a redhead in a workshop that I was working in tell me this. This person said, "I can remember like it was yesterday. My peers told me when I was growing up, I'd rather be dead than a redhead." Okay, so everybody has been marginalized, right? So if you can tap into that and you understand that, then people can change. I'm not sure I agree with his strategy of every time somebody says something to confront it, because if you do that in the Marine Corps, all you're gonna be doing is confronting, okay? I'm a firm believer you go in, you do a lot of listening, you perform, you gotta perform. You got to perform if you're black, you got to perform. And then, then you get some street cred. Again, you gotta pick and choose when to talk. I had conversations with my company mates when I was on the ship. I'm on the ship, this guy, Doug Bales from Georgia, right? Doug Bell starts telling me about his family from Southwest Georgia. He goes on and on and on. I said, "Okay, well, let me tell you about my family. I'm the grandson of a Virginia tobacco sharecropper." He said, "No." I said, "No, I heard your story. You're going to hear my story." But anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Understood.
Ike, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Dr. X. Just a couple of things that I want to speak to just briefly. First, Dale, I understand and can relate to the Italian gentleman you spoke of. I had a company also that was Italian, and at one point I wanted to leave the Naval Academy. And he confronted me with that. And he understood what was going on in my life at that time with the culture at the academy. And he basically said, and really didn't hold back, that as an Italian, he experienced the same thing going through the academy when he was there. And I had never thought of that. Carl's conversations, or his presentation, brought back a lot of those memories when he was talking about everybody has a story, and everybody wants to be loved, and everybody wants to be a part of what they are involved in. And that too resonates. Obviously, I was there with Carl and Chuck and Dave there, and there are others that are on the phone or on the Zoom meeting that I was there with. I want to direct this to you, Carl. I've used your book, your story, and the book is inspirational. And if I really thought about it, I'd honestly could say I probably use it every time I go out to talk to young people. Having that been said, this group I was not aware existed. Dr. X, I think you're doing a fantastic job with it. I would say I'd like to participate and be involved in it more. However, I'm in California, man. I got up at 4:30 for this, and I'm blaming Carl for that. But I'm thankful that Carl hit me up with it, because it's been truly a blessing to see so many people of color who've excelled in the military and in life as well, and see how the military has helped them. So my compliments goes out to each of you. And in particular, the person that's put all this together, Dr. X, and Carl for getting me out of bed, which I'm going right back to bed when I get off this call, just let you know. As far as, I apologize for the background, but my family's asleep. I'm in the bathroom at a hotel because my daughter's come out from New York. So we're sitting here in Palm Springs getting ready to tag up. So with that being said, I'm going to check out. God bless all of you. Keep moving. Carl, your story about your dad brought back memories about my dad, who also served in World War II. And I learned a lot from him in terms of life, in terms of how we as a people of color can succeed in life. And I think you've nailed it on the head, Carl, with you gotta love people. You gotta include people. You have to address things the right way. And you have to be very strategic with what you do. So with that being said, hey, God bless all of you. Love you guys.
Thanks. I truly appreciate that. Hey, Carl, over to you for closing comments.
Yeah, I appreciate the participation. And I think that the conversation is something that we don't have enough of. And that's one of the things that I learned when I was at Procter & Gamble. We had a lot of conversations about things just like this, right? How do you go in a room and you're in the room and they act like you're not there? What do you do to do that? There's strategies to do that, and I learned those type of things, how do you talk to somebody? I mean, it's all, so it's a strategy, and I put everything that I could in my book. It's from 0 to 65. And it's my take on life. The research is my life. The book is set up such that this happened, this is what I did, and this is what the result is. Good, bad, or indifferent. And it's got, after each chapter, you can write notes about what did you learn, what are you gonna do differently. I can take that book and do a 1 hour workshop, 4 hour workshop, 1 day workshop, weekend workshop, because it's so rich. It causes people's minds to open up. And once you open up their minds, then they can start thinking and doing some things differently. So I do it for team building, strategic planning, and all of that. It's an easy read. Michael Black read it in 1 hour. He got my book. He sent me a note saying, I got your book. An hour later, he calls me and said, I read your book, picked it up, couldn't put it down. I'm just glad to be amongst you brothers and sisters.
Wow, outstanding, sir. Truly, truly appreciate it. Wow, you have gotten our weekend off to a great start.